We're looking at some key principles in recovering your cycle or just getting your cycle for the first time. And so with those 3 athletes last week who got their periods back, like those are some of the best messages. I love, checking in on them or having them send me a message like, I got my period back. I'm so excited. And one of them was, I got my cycle for the first time, which is amazing. We're definitely celebrating. And she PR'd in the same week for her distance run. So we were very, very excited for her.
Welcome to the High School Athlete Nutrition Podcast, where we chat about fueling your performance on and off the field, court, track, or pool. I'm your host, Stephanie Militano, a registered sports dietitian who specializes in helping athletes optimize their performance with a strong fueling plan. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting out, this podcast will provide you with specific strategies and practical tips to help you reach your performance goals. So join me as we explore the world of nutrition and learn to take your game to the next level.
Welcome back to the High School Athlete Nutrition Podcast. You lost your period. Now what? This is what we're talking about today, a topic that is not discussed enough in the world of sports, and it's missing and irregular periods. If you're an athlete and you have lost your period or your cycle's kind of sporadic, it's irregular, or it hasn't started yet, this episode is for you. So to start off with some technical stuff, a missing period is called amenorrhea. And amenorrhea is a big red flag that your body just isn't getting enough fuel to support your sport and your training and your muscle recovery. And then you as a human with your organ function and your bone density and just growth and development in general. That energy imbalance is just way off. And some athletes think it's normal to lose your period. I'm going to tell you this. It can be common, but it most certainly is not normal. Not having your cycle or changes in your cycle can be a sign of underfueling or low energy availability. Your body just doesn't have the energy available to keep up with that training and your body cycle, so it starts to shut off systems to save some energy. And so long term, this definitely has some health impacts, meaning weaker bones or increasing your injury risk, hormone imbalances. So maybe you're not able to build muscle or just maintain that cycle regularly, and then just poor recovery in general. So today we're talking about how do the athletes that I work with get their cycles back. I want to share some of my tips that I share with athletes because I think it's so important that you have the tools in your toolbox. And so before we dive in, speaking of toolboxes, if you're looking for more in-depth nutrition strategies and meal plans and recovery tools, you're definitely going to want to check out the Academy. It's my online nutrition library that is packed with information for athletes and their parents. My goal is to give you the tools that you need to learn how to fuel your body and correct that energy availability so that season after season, you have a normal cycle. So I will link that in the show notes so you have it, but definitely check out the Academy if you're looking for more resources. Looming question is, why do athletes lose their periods? Why does it happen? There are a few key reasons that athletes may lose their period. Typically, it's not eating enough energy, calories. Your body is just prioritizing survival over reproduction. So if you're not eating enough or you're underfueling, your period is typically the first thing to go, or it's just not going to come if it hasn't come yet because your body just doesn't have the fuel that it needs to get that cycle going. So typically, first thing it chops off, but also something pretty noticeable. You don't really notice your bone density weakening. You can't really see through your body, but you can notice that change in menstrual cycle if you've had it already, or if you haven't had it and you're around 15, that's a sign that, hey, maybe we're not eating enough calories. And then even beyond that, it's correcting the carbohydrate availability of those calories. So making sure that carbs are the foundation of your fueling plan. Carbs are essential for training, they're essential for your brain health, but they're also a really crucial part in your hormone balance. And the mistake that I see several athletes making, or many athletes making, is choosing low carb diets or managing and pulling back the portions of their carbohydrates. And when you restrict carbohydrates and restrict energy, it can really mess with your estrogen levels. And that, again, can throw off your menstrual cycle and your bone density and really lead to some big health impacts that not only impact you as an athlete, but you as a strong human as well. The third thing is too much training or just really intense training sessions. Overtraining can stress out your body and throw your hormones off. And they can, again, that leads to shutting down your menstrual cycle to save that energy in the short term. And so whenever an athlete is trying to recover their period, I always look at how can we reduce some of the training, some of the movement wherever possible. My first question is always, do you take a rest day? Do you take time off? And most athletes will say like, yeah, I'll take a Saturday or like a Monday. And then I say, okay, well, what do you do on those days? Oh, I'll like go for a short run, or I'll take a class, or I'll do kickboxing, or I'll lift at home. I'm like, that's not a rest day. You're still training. You're still moving your body. And so I consider training all movement. If you're doing any extra movement, that's contributing to that energy deficiency or that low energy availability. Your body doesn't have the fuel that it needs. You're doing too much. And so, yes, you can go for a short walk with your dog or a short walk with your family. I'm not saying you have to sit all day, but think about ways to reduce that intense training. So on a rest day, I don't want you hitting the pool swimming laps or doing extra miles or doing a strength session by yourself. Do some gentle yoga, go for a walk, support that muscle recovery and that movement in a more slow, relaxed way. Again, this is your opportunity in that day to pack as much fuel in as you can before the rest of the week is a bit crazy. So take a true rest day and not an active recovery day if you can. Tip number 4 is looking at your body composition. So if your body fat is too low, you're not producing the hormones and the estrogen really to support a regular cycle. So we do need an essential amount of body fat. And I've seen this vary slightly between different athletes. And so it's important that when we're looking at recovering your body, we're also looking at, okay, can we add some healthy tissue back on? Can we get you into a weight range that supports your health and your performance? Because I'm here to say that smaller doesn't always mean better athlete. I see this all the time from middle school, high school, collegiate, and pro athletes I'm working with. It's, oh, I might need to lose weight, so I'm performing better. And it's like, well, if you're losing weight, you're probably losing muscle too, and you're not eating enough, so your training is really awful. How is that going to improve your game? How are you going to be a stronger athlete by doing that? And then when they sit back, they're like, oh yeah, that actually sounds pretty miserable. It's like, yeah, it does. I actually had one athlete come to me. She was a D1 athlete on scholarship. And she was like, well, I don't look like an athlete. I don't have this particular body for what I should look like. And I just looked at her and I said, you have a scholarship at a D1 university. You're telling me that you've made it this far with the body that is strong and fueled, and you want to change that? And so it's putting into perspective that less isn't better when it comes to athletes. So we don't always want to drive your body fat way down to the bottom. You definitely need some in order to promote muscle recovery and strength and performance, but also to balance that menstrual cycle and just overall hormones. And then lastly is thinking about your stress level from day to day. So it's not just the stress of training and that physical stress on your body, but mental stress, lack of sleep, pressure from sports or school, or the combination of AP classes and college classes and recruiting, and all of this stuff is just putting a lot on your mental health. And when you're really stressed, your body is, again, not going to put energy into reproduction and having your menstrual cycle. So taking a pause, and this is where I always say, on those true rest days, do something that you enjoy, that takes some of the pressure off, or connect with a therapist. There are so many times that I'm like, hey, athlete, let's connect you with a therapist to either talk about game day anxiety or game day prep or just mental stress from day to day. And the tools that they can give you can really help you improve as an athlete, improve that mental clarity, that mental strength, just that overall, again, adding tools to your toolbox. That is the key. So the good news is that we can make progress. We can look at making these small intentional changes that will recover your period. And with all that to say, we talk about a therapist bringing in, like we always want to talk to a doctor too, and getting those lab values. And there's a whole team behind you on this. So we're looking at nutrition and sleep and mental health, but also your physical in terms of your lab work. And you might need a DEXA scan to look at bone density, depending on how long your cycle's been gone. So this is why it's so important to work with a registered dietitian who specializes in sports nutrition, but also having your doc run some labs and get some extra tests to make sure that that we're covering things on all bases. And it might, you might be missing your cycle because of PCOS, or it might be under fueling. So it's important that we figure out the root cause of why, and then we can really work on being efficient on getting your period back. So the athletes that I work with, we're looking at some key principles in recovering your cycle or just getting your cycle for the first time. And so with those 3 athletes last week who got their periods back, like those are some of the best messages. I love, checking in on them or having them send me a message like, I got my period back. I'm so excited. And one of them was, I got my cycle for the first time, which is amazing. Like, we're definitely celebrating. And she PR'd in the same week for her distance run. So we were very, very excited for her. And these are things where, like, yes, we want to celebrate your cycle. It is annoying to have. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, but we want to celebrate because it's a really great win that you're doing everything that you need to do to help your body do what it needs to do to support you and your sport. So what are some things that these athletes are working on? How am I working with them and giving them the tools to support their period? And the first thing is just correcting that energy availability and making sure that they are eating consistently and they're eating enough. Most athletes, I think those are the 2 things that I see struggle, like, are the biggest struggles, is 1, eating consistently, meaning having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks in between, a pre-workout snack, maybe a mid-workout snack, a recovery snack, an evening snack. It sounds like a lot when you say it like that, but your body genuinely needs that much fuel. We genuinely need to consistently give your body fuel to remind it to, hey, can you kick my metabolism, kick my hormones, kick everything back into play so that you can be your strongest self. So when we look at eating more, we're looking at eating consistently. And then we're also honing in on carbs. Carbs are that essential fuel for your muscles and your brain. And if your brain is washed over and soaked up in energy and carbs, it starts turning on those systems to start turning on the hormones and making hormones, which again supports your menstrual cycle. So we're really looking at how can we eat consistently and how can we add in energy where we can. So, when we talk about mistakes for athletes, you're busy. And I get that sometimes you skip breakfast because you're running to school or you forget a snack or the school lunch just isn't enough. So we're trying to find ways to make sure that you're fueling throughout the day and then you're choosing strong fuel choices. So an example would be that, I had an athlete who said, well, I'm eating all my meals and I'm having snacks. I'm eating a ton. I'm just overly stuffed. And as we began to kind of pick apart and really dive into what she was currently eating, well, breakfast was awesome. It was a huge bowl of overnight oats with lots of great fuel and fats and carbs, and that was really great. But then her lunch at school was a salad from the salad bar at school with some croutons as her carbs and maybe a little piece of chicken from the entree line if she liked the way it looks. So it's kind of like a not everyday thing. And I was like, this is this final opportunity to fuel your muscles, to fuel your body before you head to practice. And yes, you're eating consistently, but we're not checking the box on eating enough fuel, especially carbs and especially fats. So definitely fell a little bit short there. And with some changes, eventually she too got her cycle back. But it's about that consistent change and making sure that you're not just eating more, but you're also eating those really important fuels like carbohydrates. We're thinking about whole grain breads and pastas and bagels and rice. And we're adding in essential fats like avocados and nuts and nut butters because these are the backbones for your hormones. And we're sneaking in fuel in ways that you don't feel like you're going to pop. That's always my goal. And if you've worked with me one-on-one, you know that I say that often. Like, I want to make sure that you're eating enough, but I also don't want to feel like I can just like pop you with a pin because you're so full. And so how we can do that is looking at like smoothies and milkshakes and recovery drinks that help you get the fuel that you need, but they're more liquid. So they're easily digested and you're not feeling stuffed all the time. Those are the big things in creating that energy balance and correcting low energy availability. It's about adding in the carbs, adding in the protein, and adding in those fats that help to really elevate your game. We're focusing on energy dense fuel and consistent fuel throughout the day. And if you're looking for that structured fueling guide, please check out the Academy. There's a full section on meal planning and meal timing and really looking at what to eat and when to eat it. Tip number 2, and we've touched on this already, is reducing the intensity or the duration of training. And this is hard to do. This is really hard to do, especially if you're an elite athlete. You're like, I can't miss soccer practice and I won't play. Or I can't, skip track practice because it'll impact my PR, or, a day out. I heard an athlete told me the other day, like, 2 days out of the pool and now I'm a week behind in training, and I get it. I totally get it. So let's start by looking at movement outside of scheduled practice. Are you overdoing it in the weight room, or doing extra core at home, or going for runs, or hopping on your spin bike while you're watching TV? These are all things that I've seen athletes do that create that energy imbalance. And so look outside of practice and see if you can scale back just a little bit. Give yourself that true recovery day. So you're having a true day off of intense training. You can do some yoga or, low intensity walking. You're not like power walking, you're going for a short walk with your dog. But we want to create that time when your body isn't burning a ton of fuel, but everything you eat can be used to energize and repair and rebuild your body and strengthen your muscles and get those hormones back on track. I know it's hard to cut back on the practice, but it's important to find space within your week where you're like, oh yeah, I guess I am overdoing it here. Or sometimes working with your coach and saying, okay, especially if you're going from a practice to strength training, a couple times a week, maybe ask if you can take a 15 or 20-minute break between so you have time to have a bigger snack. So you don't always have to skip training, but you do have to find ways to fix that energy gap wherever you can. Point 3, I want to talk a little bit more about fats. Fats are that backbone or that building block of hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which regulate your cycle and kind of trigger that bleed and then replenish. So we want to include really great fats, really strong fats every single meal. So this can be things like peanut butter, almond butter, or sunflower butter. You can do olive oil or avocados. Fish like salmon or tuna are great options. Actually, over the last week, I've been creating a lot of snack mixes with athletes. Athletes don't necessarily love trail mix. I feel like the raisin gets a bad rap. Anyway, we'll create snack mixes. So meaning like you'll pick your favorite nut, you'll pick your favorite seed, like a sunflower seed or a pumpkin seed. And then maybe you'll add like mini graham crackers or Teddy Grahams or, a Cheez-It or a goldfish, dried fruit. You're creating a snack mix that you would actually eat and enjoy. And in that, you're creating a snack that's packed with healthy fats and essential proteins and strong carbohydrates. You're kind of helping that energy. So don't be afraid to jump into fats because we really need them. I mean, I had an athlete text me the other day. I said, hey, I made a breakfast sandwich on a croissant. And I was like, slam dunk. Like that's a great way to add in more fats and kind of elevate from just some toast. So that's awesome. Another easy swap is looking at your dairy products. If you're only choosing low fat or non-fat dairy, I'm going to ask you to flip the script here. Choose the whole milk dairy product. A couple of benefits. One, you elevate the fat, which is awesome. Your body needs it. It tastes a little bit better too, but also it helps you absorb the vitamin D that's in that dairy because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, meaning that it needs fat to be properly absorbed. If you're having whole milk yogurt versus the low fat or non-fat, you're absorbing more of the vitamin D because you have the fat in there. Definitely a win when it comes to bone health and hormone health and just general fueling if you're choosing the whole milk version. Thinking about, we didn't really talk a lot about protein in this. And there's 2 nutrients I do want you to think about in terms of your cycle outside of carbs and fats are the protein and iron content of your meals. Low iron can slow down your recovery and impact just your overall performance. And so if our goal is to get your menstrual cycle back, well, every month you're losing iron when you have your period. So we want to make sure that your iron levels are within normal and you're being consistent with your iron intake. And this is why I always recommend heading to your doctor and getting some labs done. Let's see where your iron is. Hopefully we can kind of fine tune with some food options, but if we need a supplement, this is a great time to add in some of those supplements as well. So we're thinking about protein. We want to be consistent. You can look at things like beef, chicken, turkey, eggs, dairy products, beans, nuts, seeds, lentils, tofu. There are so many different options for protein. My one kind of caveat is don't lean too much into protein powders and protein shakes and protein bars. I typically recommend 1 bonus protein per day. So that means like 1 protein powder or bar or shake, right? We're not having one at every meal. Just one, lean into that to start. And if we need to fill the gap with protein, well, that's when maybe, hey, let's meet one-on-one and figure out what's going on and where we can fill that gap with protein, hopefully with real food. But they're also so you have the protein, you're consistent with protein, and then we're also looking at iron. So can we add in beef or leafy greens, fortified cereals, things that have iron in them to boost those iron stores, to really help get your cycle, but also to support your muscle recovery and just your overall muscle endurance. Iron is really critical. If you're feeling extra tired or lightheaded, you might not be getting enough. And this is where having that lab value can be really helpful in figuring out, do you need a supplement or can we just lean into more iron-rich foods? And lastly, what I want you to do is think of yourself as that whole human, right? So we talked a lot about nutrition, but we want to prioritize rest and we want to prioritize sleep and we want to prioritize managing your stress. And so when you're thinking about the things that your body needs to recover, yes, it needs nutrition. Yes, it needs hydration, but also mentally you've got to be ready. And so you do that by resting and sleeping and managing your stress. So we're aiming for at least 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And I know you're busy. I have athletes tell me all the time, get home from practice at 9 or 10 o'clock. By the time you shower and do homework and eat dinner, it can be 11 or 12 and you're up at say 5 or 6 for either practice before school or you're just up for school. Try to find ways to catch up on sleep. If it means putting your phone down, if it means setting limits on social media before bed, try to do that because every minute counts. Find ways to manage your stress. Maybe it's just deep breathing, journaling, stretching, yoga, a slow walk, or meeting with a therapist to help with some of those mental tools. Whatever works for you, you've got to lean into it because that's really going to help you overall as an athlete, but also really help in getting that cycle going. If you've lost your period or your period just hasn't started yet, the biggest thing to remember is that you can work on it with your doctor and nutrition and finding and balance with stress. You can do it. We just have to have a strategy. We have to have intention when it comes to eating enough and balancing training and nutrients and making sure you're giving your body everything it needs. If this episode resonated with you, I highly recommend joining the Academy because you'll have more tools, step-by-step guides, meal plans, snack ideas, and so much more to help you focus on your nutrition. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next episode. Happy fueling, athlete.